Welcome. Good day. Welcome to this breakout session of the Penn State Nutrition Conference, sponsored by Brevant Seeds. My name is John Anderson, silage technical leader for Brevant in the upper Midwest. And it's my privilege today to welcome you and to introduce our topic and our speaker. But first, Brevant may be a new name to some of you. Actually, it's our job to bring new through high performance products, exclusive to retail, in a new agile way of doing business. Silage corn that you've known through our heritage brand has brought you the products and the performance that you've come to know. And today, we want to reinforce that and also show you a brand new way to look at silage corn. A new way to compare hybrids. As we think about ways that we've looked at hybrids in the past, such as Milk 2006 and Michigan State Corn Picker, their partial budget, those were great tools for their time. However, they have not been updated and they do not include nutrition metrics such as potentially digestible NDF and UNDF 240. They don't get us to where we need to be to figure out differences between hybrids and see which hybrids are going to be the most profitable. A new way is the Minor Institute Corn Silage Hybrid Fiber and Starch Yield Calculator, developed in 2019. If you want to know the guts of what all went into that, you can still access the World Dairy Expo Forage Seminar by Mike Miller in 2019. And he does an excellent job of explaining the science behind the making of this calculator. Today, we invite you to a walkthrough of this new income over feed cost calculator. You don't have to put your boots on, but your guide will be Bill Sutliff, Brevant Retail Product Agronomist Nutritionist from Carlisle, Pennsylvania. One of the things Bill will mention is FQ, which stands for forage quality. This is a brand new silage corn lineup for Brevant. It complements our unified BMR and TMF lineups. In a nutshell, this lineup is high yielding, very good NDFD, very good starch levels. For more information, contact Bill or your local Brevant rep wherever you live. With that, let's take a walk with Bill through the new calculator. Thank you.
Thank you, John, for that background information leading up to our demonstration of this very valuable tool for evaluating differences between corn silages. So this tool was developed in the spreadsheet as a tool. It was developed by the William H. Minor Institute in New York. So a big thank you we're sending out to Rick Grant and all the folks at Minor. And especially want to thank Michael Miller, who was working at the Institute at that time, has since completed his PhD work and is working as a commercial nutritionist in Western New York. So you see a background picture here of just the instruction sheet. But before we even get started there, if we are going to evaluate differences between corn silages, what is some of the information that you think would be valuable to you to say, hey, how can I get a good, accurate comparison? And if you thought, well, I need to have, what corn silage samples am I going to look at and compare? You are correct. So these samples are from Cumberland Valley Analytical Services. We have our example hybrid number 1, example hybrid number 2, example hybrid number 3 and example hybrid number 4. All 4 of these samples came from one of our demonstration plots in Mount Joy, Pennsylvania from the 2020 growing season. There are 2 forage quality, or some people may call them dual purpose hybrids, included in there. And there are 2 BMR type hybrids to look and use for our comparison. So back to this spreadsheet tool that we have here, you see many tabs along the bottom here. The instructions, which is the page that you see now. And I need to point out, wherever you see a cell that has gray in it, is filled with gray, that is where we can input data. And you see this color right above it, those are calculated values, so you don't want to mess with those cells. So instructions, and then the insert data, yields, and so forth across here. Looks intimidating, but don't let that, thwart you. This is a simple spreadsheet to work through. So we go to our insert data page, and you can see I've preloaded in, for the sake of time, the 4 hybrids, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Number 1 and number 2 are FQ, or forage quality dual purpose type hybrids, corns that should make good lactating performance type feeds, then comparing them to 2 different BMRs. For the example's sake, I left this top hybrid number 1 blank so that you could get a feel for how you just go along your lab report and fill in. So the first one, of course, is the yield. What is the yield that the farm either expects to get? If they have documentation on their actual yields, that is better. If you're taking company information, try to have good, true comparisons that are head-to-head. Don't take yield data from an extremely drought-stressed area that was like up in the center part of the state this year, and then try to compare it with Lancaster County. That's just not fair to any company, or a comparison between 2 different hybrids. So all 4 of these came from the same location, so we have a good comparison to work with here. So this hybrid number 1, which I've left blank, we start out with its yield. Well, it was 28.9 ton per acre. Dry matter on that was 32.2%. The NDF is 34.5. The NDFD for 30 hours, the fiber digest and neutral detergent fiber digestibility measured at 30 hours is 56%. Now, this is something that you don't see in a lot of different spreadsheets, because if you can think of one that is utilizing the undigested fiber fractions, the UNDF numbers, let me know about that. But this one definitely uses that and takes that into account also. So the UNDF 30 hours is 15.2, 120 hours is 12.2, and then 240 is 11.3. And you can already see down across those lists, there are some differences that's being expressed. Next, we put in our total starch, 38.5%. And finally, the starch digestibility, which is 68%. So you're done on that page. You're done with that tab. The next tab, yields, basically just takes all that information that we just put in, and you can see the same information duplicated here, and then starts breaking it out into different subsets. It looks at standardizing all the yields on a 35% dry matter basis, and then giving you the yields of the different components as far as dry matter yield on 100% dry matter yield, the yield of total NDF, the total yield of UNDF 240, and so forth for each of these different, factors along the way. The yield of starch per acre and the yield of rumen fermentable starch per ton per acre, I should say. So the next tab over is cost. Oh, okay, what do we mean by cost? Well, this does take a whole farm approach. So whenever and wherever possible, you want to have as accurate of production costs available when you go to fill in this spreadsheet. And the producer will tell you, okay, my planting population is 32,000 kernels per acre is what I drop. If every bag that I buy has 80,000 seeds in it, and that's the standard typical seed corn bag, that will plant over here 2.5 acres. So the very first cost that we need to know is the cost of that seed on a per bag basis. For this example, we have $275 in there for the FQ forage quality hybrids, $362.50 for the BMRs. There is a spread in the seed cost, but also when we get over here to the other costs associated with planting corn, you can see cost of planting per acre, that is the equipment, tractor, and labor, the cost of the fertilizer per acre, the cost of chopping, whether you own your own equipment or you're having custom hire done, you should know what that cost of chopping for every acre is. And then the cost to haul that silage to the bunker, to your silo, has a cost value figured in there also. In the case of the BMR, if you say, okay, back here, this price spread per bag should cover the cost of a fungicide, you can go back over here and say, well, you know what, fungicide, we don't really have a separate category for that, so I would just add the cost into the cost of the fertilizer per acre, because that's kind of a more where those variable inputs can be put in on this spreadsheet. Likewise, they don't really have herbicide costs in there. I would assume that the herbicide cost across all those different treatments would be the same, but you could put in the cost of fertilizer and herbicide if you so desire, to even drill down further on where your cost, true cost, is for this particular farm. So once we plug all those in, it then breaks it out into the cost per acre for each one of those different hybrids based on the seed cost and the different fertilization cost and so forth like that. And then he broke it on out that these cost figures are on a per bag basis, kind of a different way to look at it. We normally don't look at it that way, so I'm not going to dwell on those figures right now. The next tab over here says cost of fiber. So what do you mean by cost of fiber, Bill? Well, okay, so first of all, we take the cost information from the previous tab, take that yield information from back at the yields tab and bring all that information over. And what we're doing is trying to develop and generate the cost of the different nutrient subsets on a dollar per ton basis, as you see listed here. So this hybrid one is saying that its cost is $37.90 per ton, and that equates into factoring the yield along with those production costs. Where this last hybrid down here, the number 4 hybrid, that is a BMR, because of the yield plus all the cost factors, it is $51.70 per ton of silage as the total price per ton. Then he took it a step further, Michael took it a step further, and he broke these down into the cost per pound of the different nutrients that these different forages will supply. So then our final tab comes down to, okay, let's break this down as to what can we expect for potential income. So the last bit of information that you may need might be what? Well, how much milk are we expecting to produce? And at what price is that milk? So in our example, we have high producing cows. You can say this is a high group, or you can say, okay, I'm just doing my herd average, whatever works for you. Our diet that our nutritionists, you folks, will supply to us is 60 pounds of dry matter intake. The diet is 40% corn silage of the total diet, which makes 24 pounds dry matter of corn silage that we are feeding. And just to give you another demonstration here, say that my diet isn't that heavy of corn silage. Maybe it's only 35% corn silage, not 40%. And you see that it automatically calculates over 21 pounds of dry matter intake instead of the 24. So I'm just changing this back so I don't forget where I'm at our 40% of the diet is corn silage. Then you factor in and say, okay, what is my fat corrected milk, energy corrected milk that I'm shooting for? Because we're using this as a comparison, we put in 100 pounds of milk, and that makes it a nice indexing tool based off of 100. But you can put 85 in there, you can put 90, whatever you feel comfortable with. Then you get this average value of the average digestible NDF 30 hours from your laboratory. Cumberland Valley and their whole database will generally be right around 55%. So that's where I came up with and got that figure from. Input your price of milk. A lot of debate on milk price, but I'm using $18 a hundredweight, which makes it 18 cents a pound. And then the last kind of like tricky part becomes is what is my cost of the diet minus the corn silage cost? And you're going, what do you mean there? Because we are just comparing corn silage. We don't want to mask the effect or the cost effect from variations in corn silages by something else that happens in the diet. So you want to subtract out your total feed, take your total feed cost and subtract out the corn silage cost. And then that is the figure that you input in this cell there, so that we have a standard comparison across all the different hybrids that we're comparing. $7 was the figure that Michael had worked out at that time when he was putting this together. I've done some work in Pennsylvania area, and that's fairly close. And of course, your other forages in your feeding program will have an impact on that number. So wherever you can, input as close to possible the actual figures from your own farm. So we have all that inputted. So all this silage cost per head per day, because of our feeding rate up here at 24 pounds of dry matter, all gets calculated out as to what our cost is. And then if you're interested, what's my cost of fiber, what's my cost of undigested fiber, and so forth like that. And here again, go back to show you how that changes. If we go back to that 35% of the diet is corn silage, and you see that these figures here for the silage cost per head per day did change. So very dynamic, very good, spreadsheet if you want to do some what ifs. Okay, what if I feed more, or what if I feed less corn silage in my diet? What the impact does that have? Likewise, you can go back and say, okay, I know my nutrient values of these different corn silages, and clear back at that insert data tab when we were putting in our data back here. You can say, okay, this particular dual purpose or FQ type corn silage has this yield. What happens if I get an equal yield with my proposed hybrid, or what happens if I get more yield? What happens if I get less yield? And what does that impact across the whole spreadsheet? So it does give you an opportunity to do some what ifs. So after we have all that in there, it calculates out what our feed costs per head per day, then calculates out the revenue, 100 pounds of milk in this example, times $18 a hundredweight, and subtracts off this feed cost to get your income over feed cost. You say, well, end of story. Well, no, it's not. Because I think you know as nutritionists, and it's been demonstrated through a lot of different research functions, that as you see this increase in fiber digestibility, what happens? The cows eat more, right? Yeah, so what Michael then did, using the Michigan State research from Oba and Allen, he looked at this potential dry matter intake based on what happens with this fiber digestibility number here. So in this first case, it was pretty close on to what we expected with our 60 pounds of dry matter intake, because the Oba-Allen measurement then says, okay, we had this increase in fiber digestibility, and we see now we have a projected 63.4 pounds of dry matter intake. That needs to be accounted for in our feed cost, right? So in that Oba-Allen, we expect for every percentage point improvement in digestible NDF, about a quarter pound of intake increase. And you see that right here, that he has that factored into the equation. Likewise, in the milk from the same Oba-Allen work in that equation, you also gain approximately 1/2 pound of milk for that increase in fiber digestibility. And you see that value being calculated in right here, that 0.47. So yes, we had greater feed intake with this hybrid versus that #1 hybrid, but also we're gaining almost 6 total pounds of milk. So why is that all important? Okay, so when we're doing this evaluation of these different hybrids, what is their potential milk that they can make? Are you happier with making 100 pounds of milk? Or is the dairyman going to be happier making 106 pounds of milk? But then it has to be balanced by the cost to produce that milk. So we have the adjusted feed cost listed here, which accounts for that increase in dry matter intake. Then multiply that for your price of milk, subtract off, and then you get your net or your final income over feed cost. So here you see that hybrid #1 right here has an income over feed cost of $10.60. That's pretty good, I'll take that. But down here, these two BMRs, there's $10.99 and there is $11.06 per income over feed cost. And seeing as how that we're basing this off 100 pounds of milk per day, in this case, we can definitely say, well, that would be another 46 cents per head per day of income over your feed cost for every cow. So is 46 cents enough to get everybody excited? Even up here on these two different dual purpose hybrids, 60 cents, 1060 income over feed cost versus 1078 is 18 cents enough to get you excited about, okay, I like this hybrid versus that hybrid, knowing that we factored in the yield differentials, the cost of production differentials, and then the milk potential for the income that these different hybrids can produce for us. So in the case of the two 8FQ hybrids, we're looking at 18 cents. So for every 100 cows, that equates into what? What's 18 cents times 100, even though we try to keep our math simple, just so I'm not making a mistake, that's $18 per day for every 100 cows. So if we're looking at this 1106 versus 1060, now we're looking at 46 cents per cow And that's going to be what? $46 per day. Difference for additional revenue, net revenue over feed cost for this particular farm and in this example. Like I said, you go back and you put in as accurate of information in our cost figures, as accurate of information as we can in our yield figures, and we should have the laboratory information that give us the exact spot on information for these hybrids here. So is this another great tool that we can use, that we can add value to the farm, but also demonstrate how the farm can be more profitable by looking at their forage selection? And once again, I want to point out this spreadsheet can be downloaded from the Miner website under the Dairy Management Tools selection. So thank you for tuning in to this demonstration of this great hybrid evaluation tool presented to you by Brevant Seeds. And I'm going to turn it back over to John Anderson at this time. Thank you.
Thank you for the great demo, Bill. I'm especially glad to have a nice warm walkthrough when this morning, where I'm recording this from, it was 12 degrees above zero. At any rate, what we would like to do is summarize and let you know a little bit about how Brevant is using this tool. Of course, we are using it for head-to-heads like Bill showed with our products and competitive products and on-farm situations, real-time comparisons to get a really good picture of differences between hybrids. Beyond that, we're using it in our plot reporting. Beyond our standard plot report, we are running what is called a minor IOFC report, and we are listing the adjusted IOFC as the defining metric to determine between hybrids amongst those that are listed on a plot. So we invite you to get in touch with Bill if you'd like to see one of those reports or look at any information that he went over today. His contact information is listed on the bottom. We really appreciate your time being with us today and want to thank you and wish you the best at the conference and have a great fall. Thank you very much.